Hi everyone, thanks for coming back after lunch. So we're going to kick off our first afternoon session with Suzanne, and she's going to be telling us about using Padlet and Snapchat to encourage engagement with core teaching materials out with the classroom. Suzanne.
Thank you. Can I just check you can hear me yet? If I stand behind here, you won't see me, so I'm going to move out to the side. So I'm a teaching fellow at Strathclyde University. I teach prosthetics and orthotics, but my interest in using social media has expanded over the last few years, and I use Snapchat as a tutorial tool with my students. So I'll go through the forecast of why use social media with your students in higher education. I'm sure most of you in the room will be familiar with what Padlet is, but perhaps maybe not with how you might be able to use Snapchat in higher education. I'll also talk about how I integrated Padlet within my Snapchat tutorials as well. And I'll talk a bit about the student feedback, the feedback I've got from students about using these, and a brief bit about GDPR. So I particularly like this quote here, and this is why I started using social media with my students. I wanted to bridge that gap between formal learning in the classroom and informal learning out with the class. Our students have a very full timetable. They're in 9 till 5 pretty much every day, apart from a Wednesday afternoon. So there's limited opportunity for students to come and speak to me. So I wanted to be able to give them opportunity to communicate with me out with these classroom settings. If you are considering using social media in higher education, you need to think about where your students are. If I decided to start using Twitter with my second year group, hardly any of them are on Twitter, so that would be a pointless thing. So I said to them, where are you? Where do you want to communicate with me? And this came about because I tried to set up a forum on the University VLE. The students weren't engaging with that because it took 2, 3, 4 clicks to access the forum, and that was just too much. They weren't prepared to do that. And I asked them where they are, and Snapchat was the answer, and that's why I started using Snapchat as a tutorial tool. Don't be afraid to ask your students for help. The students were very much instrumental in setting this up with me. I'll talk a bit more later about managing expectations of using social media with your students. And it's important that we model good behaviour when we're utilising social media, and the students can reflect that as well. And ultimately, be brave, just give it a try. So I'll just show you this, the Padlet that I created for the students. So I'm aware that there'll be a few of you who don't know what Padlet is, but I like to describe it as an electronic whiteboard. In our course in prosthetics and orthotics, the students have to do a lot of practical patient assessment techniques, and when we demonstrate these, the students are busy taking notes. They're not watching the demonstration. When it comes to the practical sessions, they struggle. So this year I said to them, how about I take some short videos of each of these patient assessment techniques, I'll pop them on a Padlet, and I'll integrate that and share it with you on Snapchat. So all of the videos you can see here, typically less than a minute long. Each of the videos has got the specific name of the clinical test, and there's a short video describing how that's done. So essentially what this meant was the students were able to, first of all, concentrate in the demonstration. They weren't busy taking notes. Secondly, it meant they had a resource that they could access out with the classroom setting. They could look at these patient assessment videos on the bus on the way home. If they're sitting on the couch of an evening, that information was available to them as and when they wanted to use it. If you're using Padlets, I would recommend that you make it secret or password protected. And one of the good things about Padlet is that there's no sign-up required by the students. I can either send the students a link to the Padlet, or what I did was I integrated it within Snapchat tutorials. And the module evaluations at the end were very positive. The students really appreciated having this resource, and I would say, out of the comments, it was, what did you most like about this course? The access to the videos featured very highly in that. So you're probably familiar with Snapchat, using Snapchat to make yourself look 10 years younger, or perhaps like a rabbit. I particularly liked this one here because the filter matched my top. That's exciting. So essentially it is a camera app, and that's what primarily people know it's used for pictures. This may or may not be lost on you. Snapchat has got a bit of a bad reputation for being used inappropriately, with people sending parts of their body, images of parts of the body that they shouldn't, to other people. So it's got a bit of a bad reputation. We need to try and get over that. And that's because typically using Snapchat, the app, the pictures disappear after 10 seconds. And that's one of the misconceptions that I have to deal with when I'm using Snapchat, is that it can be used in different ways. Bitmojis, for me, are an essential part of using Snapchat as a tutorial tool. With your Bitmoji, it's essentially you're creating an avatar. It can come down to the shape of your face, colour of your eyes, your hairstyle. This is my colleague Sean, and I think he's got the world's best Bitmoji. Sometimes people say to me, why do you use Snapchat? Why don't you just use WhatsApp? And the problem with WhatsApp for me is that in order to be in a group with someone in WhatsApp, you need to provide them with your mobile phone number. As much as I love my students, I don't want them to have my mobile phone number. Okay? With Snapchat, the students join your group with a Snap code, and I'll show you what that looks like a bit later. So why do I use Snapchat? I've told you previously, it's because that's where my students are. That's where they wanted me to communicate with them. And interestingly as well, 77% of those between the age of 18 and 24 are Snapchat users. So it's a large demographic of our student population are Snapchat users. And essentially the students weren't engaging in the University VLE forums, so I wanted to find out how I could communicate with them more effectively. When the students helped me create my Bitmoji, and they said, oh, you want to be on ghost mode. I had no idea what they were talking about. When you use Snapchat, so these are my students, so it can tell you where you are with alarming accuracy down to the street that you live in. And this was created so that when students or people are having a night out, they can find out where their friends are and go and meet them. But you can see me here, I'm in ghost mode, so the only person that can see me on the Snap map is me. That's me travelling to Alt last year in Manchester. So the heat maps indicate where there's a high activity of Snapchat users. So you can be on ghost mode. That's something to be aware of. So this is Deb Bath. When we travelled to Alt last year, I did a Snapchat tutorial with some of the Alt committee members. So Deb thought that was hilarious. I could show that she was on a train, and we used that to find each other. So remember I said to you, you don't need your mobile phone number to connect with each other. You can use the Snap code. This is the Snap code here. You can actually just have it up on the screen as you're presenting to the students. They can take a picture of it, and they would then add you to Snapchat. So this was the Snapchat tutorial I did on the way down to Alt last year. And one of the things I quite like about Snapchat is you can see who's there. The little Bitmojis pop up and you can see who's participating. And one of the things that I particularly like about Snapchat is you can have students who participate silently in the background, so silent participation. But it means they don't miss out. You might have students who are asking you lots of questions, but everyone benefits from the answers to that. So with Snapchat, how do I use it? It is optional, it's not compulsory, so students engage with this if they want to. And I use the chat function, which means messages can actually be saved. Typically messages are deleted after 5 or 10 seconds. If you're using the chat function, you press on the message and it can be retained indefinitely. I ask questions and the students will respond to that. Sometimes the student asks questions. And one thing that's particularly good is that the students can answer each other's questions and I can moderate that. And if they've got something a bit wrong, then I can jump in and clarify any issues that they're having with that. This is just an indication of one of the chats that we had. We talked about how to identify the talonavicular joint. So I was able to pop up an image of the foot and identify exactly where the talonavicular joint is. But the students find this a very positive experience. They find it's easier to communicate because it's less formal. It's a more relaxed way of asking questions. And importantly, they can see when I'm available. So I wasn't really aware that what I was doing was particularly innovative until Eric Stoller basically used this as an example of one of his presentations at the Open University. This was the first Snapchat message that I sent out to my students. It was an X-ray, so I was doing spinal orthotics with them. I was able to zoom in on a particular aspect of the X-ray and draw their attention to that. This was on a Saturday evening. I just tried it, sent out a message, and within 10 minutes I had like 10, 15 responses from students. And they engaged because they wanted to. And that's the magic of it as well. Students can communicate with you if they're in the pub, if they're sitting on the sofa. So there are pros and cons to using Snapchat. The pros are that you can communicate with lots of students at the one time. Typically, students would email me a question, and that one student would get the answer. With Snapchat, one student emails me, and the whole group can get engages with that material. And it facilitates learning on the go, as I've said. The cons are the group size. It's limited to 32 people. So if you've got a very large cohort, then it's not going to be appropriate, but perhaps you could use it in your tutorial groups. I said I would talk about managing expectations. The students can see when I'm on Snapchat. I go on to Snapchat when I want to be there, and I pop up and they know that I'm there. They can ask me questions. And as I said, I do communicate with them out with working hours because our timetable is so full. But if that's not what you'd like to do, you can manage that and say, I'll be available between office hours. So you have to manage the expectations of the students. Another downside, potentially, is the increased use of social media. We know about the problems that can cause. And obviously, there's an investment of time that's required as well to manage these things. So if I'm starting a tutorial on Snapchat, I'll let the students know, are you ready? And when I've had enough, I'll tell them I'm logging off or good night. If they're not particularly engaging, I can send out, where are you? But it rarely happens because the students are very good at engaging with the tutorials. It's good for motivating before the exams. I'll send them good luck messages out on Snapchat. And they communicate with me using Bitmojis as well. So these are just 10, there's a blog post that I've written about 10 reasons to use Snapchat as a tutorial tool with your students. The students particularly like it, as I said, due to the ease of communication, the rapidity of that communication as well, and it was a less formal way to communicate. So what I said previously about being able to save the messages, when a message is sent on Snapchat, there's a fine line that appears. If you press on the message, it becomes a thick line, and that's how you know that your message has been saved within that. So yeah, what about GDPR? So Snapchat and Padlet are both GDPR compliant, and that's something that we do need to be aware of, and also to be aware of the fact that not all of our students want to use social media tools. And also not to assume that our students all know how these tools work. I had one student who was she was quite angry actually that I was using Snapchat as a tutorial tool within a university setting, and she sent me quite an extensive long email telling me why I shouldn't be doing that. But part of the reason was she misunderstood the tool. She said, what's the point of communicating in this way? The message disappears after 5 or 10 seconds. So we shouldn't assume that students know how these tools work. So I was able to explain to her that you can save the messages. Also, there are students who don't want to engage with Snapchat, and what I did do was I was transferring relevant teaching material onto the university VLE, so the students didn't miss out on that opportunity as well. So I've got a few blog posts about how and why I was using Snapchat as a tutorial tool. There's also a YouTube video that you might find quite useful, and there's also some student testimonials at the end of that video as well. And Alex Spears couldn't be with us today, but along with the Social Media and Higher Education Committee, I'd like to invite you all to SOCMED HE, which is taking place in Edge Hill University on the 19th of December. So thank you very much for your time, and I'd happily accept any questions.
About your choice of the use of Padlet. So they're asking whether you reconsidered it when it wasn't free anymore, and why Padlet, not a VLE.
So when it wasn't free anymore, I personally paid the licence for it. So yeah, I took that choice because I felt it was very useful. You get 5 free Padlets. I could just reuse one of my old Padlets and do the same thing. But I think the way I particularly liked about Padlet is that all those patient assessment videos are in the one place where the students can access them very easily, rather than having them as a series of videos perhaps stacked on the university VLE.
Brilliant, thanks. And the guys online would also like to know a bit more about sort of the student view of Snapchat, so whether anyone didn't want to take part and whether anyone got disadvantaged for not taking part and whether they found it easier than traditional tools.
Very much so. The feedback was that they found it easier to communicate with me because it was a less formal environment. As I said, it was optional, and I was aware of the fact that students were missing out on this communication. So all of the students are on a Facebook group. And what I did do originally was I screenshotted the relevant teaching material, because there is a bit of chat that goes on as well. And then I would then post that on the university VLE, but that took me 12 steps to get there as well. So that wasn't really a long-term solution. So the students have agreed that if there's anything, I'll ask them to take a screenshot of it and share it on their class Facebook group, and they're happy to do that, and everyone's on that Facebook group, so nobody misses out. Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. Do you have any questions in here?
Escape.
Yes, gentleman in pink.
I know sometimes when these things are considered, one of the objections is that it'll raise expectations among students that every lecturer will do this and create pressure or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, have you encountered that? And if so, how have you responded to it?
Well, generally the people that I work with roll their eyes when I'm using Snapchat as a tutorial tool and go, what are you doing now? But they're the first people to come to me and say, oh, can you put a message out on Snapchat to the students, because they know that the students will read this. And I guess it's about managing expectations. The other members of staff aren't willing to do this, but I've had very positive feedback from the students myself. And you can't force other people to engage with social media in higher education. All you can do is perhaps lead by example, show the benefits to the students, and hope that you might bring them along with you.
Hi, just a question on the support. Now, if the students don't know how to use Snapchat, are you the one that's actually telling them how to do it, or is IT aware that you're using it?
The university are aware that I'm using it. I was invited to present at the University Learning and Teaching Conference by the Vice Dean Principal of the university, so the university are aware that I'm using it. Our year group sizes are quite small. The maximum class size is about between, depending on year group, 37, 45 students. So yes, I can help them, but it's more likely that their colleagues round about them will help them with that.
How much extra work is this for you? Because it seems you put it in 3 different places.
Well, I don't. I just put it on one place, and if I want the students to, I'll ask them to screenshot something, and then they'll put it on their chat, on their Facebook group. And it is a bit of extra work, but it's valuable work. I really appreciate the interactions that I'm having with the students, and we've seen the positive benefit of using the patient assessment videos. The students are much more proficient when they come into patient assessment sessions, and it's a valuable resource that they've got to go over as well. So yes, there's more work, but it's valuable work that I appreciate, and the students seem to appreciate it too.
I love it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
Edina's work with learning technologies helps to develop skilled, data-literate students who can change our world for the better. Teachers and students can develop and share coding skills with Notable, our Jupyter Notebook service. Our Digimap services deliver high-quality mapping data for all stages of education. Future developments include a text and data mining service, working with satellite data and machine learning, and smart campus technology.